Hi, this is Jake at Canadian Cutting Edge. Today I want to do a little how-to tutorial for knives that have the axis lock that might be a little bit too stiff for you. Some of the Ganzo locks have a very easy to actuate axis lock. This one actually I have to pull quite hard, and you can see that little mark it left on my thumb there, hopefully. So that's just a lot of pressure that I have to put on to get it to actuate. A lot of their knives are just great, and some of them are more difficult. I'm going to do a tutorial, so come on down to the bench top. Here we are, ready to go. First, we need to gather together what we need to have. T6, I like this brand Wea. T8, that'll take care of almost every Ganzo knife. You need the knife. You need, I think you need pen and paper, and I'll show you why as we go on. Now, very useful would be to have a clamp. This one is way oversized, but something that just holds on its own, you don't have to screw to tighten. So some kind of spring clamp bigger than a clothespin would come in handy. A second T6, I just put this neodymium magnet on here so that it would help hold the bit. Otherwise this bit falls out on this cheap no-name driver. And some needle nose pliers will come in handy. I've got two small ones. One's got the bent tip, one's got straight. It all depends on how I'm approaching it, which one I'll use, but either one's good. So those are the good to have things. So we start off by taking off the scales. And so we just start on one side and we start removing the screws. Actually, a nice little bowl's a good idea. I'm gonna go get one. It's a good idea to have some little container to put your screws in so they don't roll off the table and get lost. Actually, I forgot to do something that I should have done when I took those out. And this is the reason why two screwdrivers. Sometimes when you go to take off the second one, it will just turn, and it's doing that in this case, it'll just turn the pillar along with it. You can just see how that's turning along with the screwdriver. So if I had that other screw back in here, I can either do it this way, as in I'll hold it with one. Let's put that in all the way, but not super tight or anything. And then I can turn loose with the other one. Okay, since it doesn't want to free up, now's another time a plier comes in handy. I'll try to hold it. I've got pliers that are smooth. I tried these first because that's not going to mar up the post. Instead of the type of pliers like that come in a multi-tool will have, what looks like tiny jimping on it to give better grip. Well, we want to start with as little grip as we need first so that we don't mar the surfaces. Okay, so those screws are all out. Just double check that they're all out so I don't reef on it the wrong way. And now we start to loosen this. Now, on Ganzo knives, I have not seen one to be different. The pivot bar that's in there has one side that's flattened. You'll see the details when I pull this apart. And that stops the pivot bar from turning along freely. As this stop bar here was just turning along freely, that does not happen with the pivot bar. It just can't because of the way it's made. So I start to loosen this side, and I'll start to loosen this side. because I'm not going to take these all the way out, but I did. I don't want to take them all the way out. So I'll put this back in just a turn or two, just so it doesn't fall out. And I loosen this. And notice how I've got it out a ways. I'm going to then push it all the way in with that bar. That bar is going to go to the other side. See, now it's sticking out on this side instead of this side. It's because I want to take this side off first. I needed to record just a little bit more because there's another issue that didn't come up with this knife, but is a factor with this knife, the 735. And now when I think about it, I remember noticing it from other Ganzo knives, and that is this. The pivot sometimes is not two screws into a bar, but it's a pivot bar with one end, even though it has a Torx head on it, the one end is part and parcel with the bar. So turning the pivot screw on this end isn't really turning a screw, I'm turning the bolt. And so the bolt can't turn very far because of that one flat edge, but the other side actually has the screw and it can turn. And if it only moves that little bit, and it moves that bit freely when the other side is loose, then you know that this is a screw attached, a bolt head and not a screw. So I take that all the way out, and now the scale should come off nicely. And look at that, there's some humidity back there. That's not a good thing. So I'm going to go get, actually some of that's oil, but even in that, it's a little too much. I'm gonna go get a paper towel. You're gonna want to learn how to open up a knife anyways, because if you ever get the knife wet and you get stuck out in the rain or something, you're gonna want to be able to take it apart and dry it off. So there's the spring. The spring comes out rather easily. You can just use your nail and lift, and it comes loose. So let's turn it this way. And so you can see the spring there has got just a little bit of a, a little 90-degree turn, a little bit of a hook. That's the end that goes in this tiny hole at the top of the liner. And then you just wiggle it a little bit and it comes loose on there. So that's what your spring looks like. So what I'm saying is, because this is free, it could slide out if I bumped it around or something. And if that pin falls out, then the blade's going to fall loose. And it's a bit of a pain putting the blade back in with the access lock and getting the washers in place and everything. It's not fun. So I take a clamp like this and I just hold it. And what I do is I'm using this line here, this red line, to help line myself up, and along with one of these other lines. And so I mark this on either side of the spring, and I mark up here on either side of the spring just where it wants to sit. So I got a mark like that, right? That's why I like using that straight line, because now the way to get your spring to work a little softer is simply to flex it too much, and that will help to make it a bit weaker. Now, you have to be really, really careful when you're doing this, because I don't know where or if you can get replacement Ganzo springs. And if you break the spring, or if you make it too soft and then you want to stretch it out again, then you're stressing it too many times. At least you're creating a different stress point, and you're weakening it every time you change the shape of it. I'm not talking about just the use of it going back and forth. I'm talking about when you flex it so much that it stays in a different shape. Do that too many times and it's prone to break. So you want to be really careful with this and just do a little bit at a time. All right. So, well, that's almost the same as it was. It's so easy to overdo. That's why I'm taking my time. Take it nice and slow. Take it nice and easy. Okay, so there we go. That's where that end sits. And now I've moved it, a good, over a 1/16 of an inch, not quite an 1/8. You see that? So it's different than it was. That's all I want to do. And then now I want to put it back on. So you slide the spring over the main part first, and then you bring it into that hole, and it might want to come free there. Tuck it back down. Take that off all the way, and just to keep safe, because I have had this come out before, this pivot bar, and it's not fun at all. 1, 2, 3, 4 turns, that's all. Turn it over, keep on holding it closed. Take that off. Very gingerly put this on and close it. If you're someone who wants to use Loctite in these threads, don't do it yet. You wait until you've got the knife totally the way you want it first. And that means you have to, put it back together and play with it a little bit for a while. I'm testing the spring, and it's a little bit softer than it was. It's not as soft as I would like it to be, but I can go through the entire process again if I need to. Okay, one thing I forgot to do, and I'm interjecting this now at the end, redo the ending. A lot of people over tighten the screws on their knives. And I'm talking about the screws on, especially on the liners. You'll know you've over tightened the pivot when you can't get the blade out. So that one's done not by how tight it is, but just if it's locked up and doesn't wiggle either way, up and down, back and forth, and it's able to move on this axis freely or free enough for you, then those are tight enough. But I'm talking about these liner scales. A lot of people just reef on it and over tighten them. Yeah, you can tighten them enough just with the tips of your fingers. That's tight enough. I don't need to tighten it more than what I can do just using my thumb and my finger like that. You don't need to grab it and twist on it. That's when you're going to chew up your screw. And especially if you've got a cheap driver, the cheap drivers tend not to fit as well. See, this driver has that much freedom in there. You can see the magnet move back and forth. That's because it's a cheap driver, and a loose driver like that is going to screw up the thread really easily. Yes, this is the right size. This is a T6. A T5 is just totally free in there, and the T7, I can't get in there. So the cheap drivers are loose, and if you've got the right size and you're wiggling it like this, that it's not very good. Working very nice now. Remember, hit like, share this video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about this channel, and always cut towards your chum and not your thumb. Bye now.